Hey guys, it's Beth. Welcome back to my channel. And today I'm working on the Canta pad from GCD Studios. This is the newest paper pad project I started in March. And I decided that this one would be a great pad to kind of bring you along on my process for, since it was relatively small based on what was left of it when I started. So it was originally 26 sheets, and the only thing I've done out of here, or I think when I started at the beginning of the month, there was about 13. It was about half of the full sheets left plus some scraps. And then I did do the March 2020 sheet load out of here. And so once I did the sheet load, I now have 8 full sheets left. Some of them are duplicate in design, and then probably another full sheet's worth of scraps plus a bunch more scraps. So I'm going to say like 9 full sheets plus some scraps. So I figured this is a very manageable amount to do almost a full pad process on, just because it's smaller. Normally the ones I'm working on are at least 48 sheets, so to kind of let you follow along the whole process would just be hard, I think, for me to do, and probably for you guys to watch sometimes. But anyway, so this one would be a good to kind of walk you guys through how I choose the papers I do, how I start the pad, the projects, the order that I do the projects in, etc. So I mentioned in my intro video that one thing I wanted to get out of here was Mother's Day cards. I would like to get a few to sell, and then a lot of them I would like to donate to Cards for Soldiers. It probably won't be in time for this Mother's Day, but I can hold them until early next spring and send them next year. But just the theme of the projects I wanted out of here were Mother's Day. So there are, about 9 sheets worth left in this pad, and the first project that I want to start with is a bigger one, not big compared to some of the other projects I've done, but bigger. And I start with the bigger projects just to make sure that I have enough paper to complete it, or at least enough variety of paper to complete it. And then I kind of work from bigger projects to smaller projects, meaning cards, later on. Because you can always create cards from scraps, but you may not be able to create, a notepad or a mini scrapbook or something like that from scraps. So I'm going to start with the bigger project that I want to do first, and that is this cute little, I'm considering it more of like a photo card, but it's actually, I got the idea from Lyric Lover Crafts. She used to be Lyric Lover 810, now she's Lyric Lover Crafts here on YouTube, and she did a tutorial on one of these back in December of 2019, I think, and she did hers truly just as a photo album or like a scrapbook. It was just pictures of a weekend vacation that she took, and she just wanted to document in a cute little way. When I did this, I used her project for when I was working through my Valentine's stash in January, and it was really fun to make, and I decided to consider mine more of a card because I thought it would be really cool that, the giver could add pictures of, them and the recipient or their kids or whoever, add whatever pictures they want in the card, and then I've left places for them to write messages, and I just figured it could be a fun photo gift card all in one. So that's kind of what I've called mine, and what I'm going to sell it as if I'm able to sell them at my craft shows. So long story, but I want to try and make at least one of those with this pad because I thought it's kind of bright and fun, and it would be a fun Mother's Day type gift where, a daughter could buy that, add some pictures of them, of the mother and daughter throughout the year, and, have a nice note in there, and it'd be a great keepsake rather than just a card. It's a card and gift kind of all in one. So that's what I've decided to start with, and I wanted to start there because I'm going to need at least one full sheet, and then I'll need some 6x6 pieces. So I wanted to make sure that I had enough. So trying to figure out what I would want on the front. And I guess I could always do more of a solid on the front and then add another pattern. So I'd really like to have a multicolored one, but I don't know. I wish I had some more of this flower paper left. That would be cool. You see, I have these journaling spots, and so I thought that would also be good. These were left, those were just some die cuts that were included in the collection originally. And so I thought those would be fun to tuck into that little pocket. And so I'm going to set those aside. And the good thing about this paper is that it's double-sided. So I think maybe we'll go with the black floral kind of on as the outside part of the card, and then it's going to have this on the inside, and so I can put more patterns on the inside to like embellish. So I think that's kind of where we'll go. So that's where we're going to start, and then as far as what I'm putting on the inside, I would like to maybe use some of that just to bring in a couple of the different colors. I like this stripe, or the polka dot. I actually like the polka dot better. And then maybe we'll do a little of this kind of green flourish. It's got like a little bit of a shimmer to it. And then depending on how the scraps go, like I have these border strips that I can always embellish with. I could always do my pocket out of that flowered paper or make journaling because it's solid on the back. I could also do some journal spots with it. So we'll kind of see how that plays out. But I am going to switch over to a voiceover while I'm doing the process, just because there's a good chance I'm not going to be able to finish this all in one sitting, and it's just easier to meld it together if I'm not having to piece together my words, just piecing together my process. So like I said, these are the papers I'm going to use. This is the card I'm going to make. Amber's tutorial will be linked in the description box below, and now I'm going to get started. Since Amber's tutorial will be linked, I'm not going to go into tons of detail on how to make the card, but we'll walk through my basic process. So I started with a 12 by 12 sheet of paper here, and I just folded it in half both ways to create 4 quarters. And I used my trimmer to cut off one of those quarters. And I would say here to cut like on the outside of your fold line on those, just so that whenever you go to fold up your card, that the pieces that are folding are a little bit shy of 6 inches on that one side, makes it easier to fold. So I did bring in my trusty old Creative Memories quarter rounder that you just saw and went through and rounded all the corners on that base piece. Now I am picking out and cutting down my matte pieces that I want to layer the card with. And I ended up cutting my layers to 5 inches, I think, so that I would have about a 1/2 inch border all the way around. And I liked on the inside of the card that the pattern was more subtle, like more of a solid, you know, whereas the outside here with all the white flowers is a little bit busier. So I'm going and rounding all of my corners on my layering pieces as well, just so they flow well with the card. And I used a 1 inch scallop circle punch from, I'm not sure where that one was from, and just to cut a little notch in my pocket piece there, just so that, you know, tags and pictures and stuff can slide in a little bit easier. And now I'm coming through and looking for some layering pieces, and I tried to utilize the border strip sheet as much as I could to get some additional layering pieces for my photo card. And here I really liked the look of that rickrack, that scalloped piece, so decided to take the time to fussy cut that out. And that will be on the layering on my pocket piece. And of course I thought I was doing a great job cutting, and then when I looked at it at the end, I'm like, oh wait, let's go clean that up. So the wet glue I'm using here is Ranger Multimedia, and that's just because my art glitter glue is almost out. And so I'm trying out this for a little bit. And it's a teeny tiny bottle. So I decided that on all of my matte pieces that I wanted to include a border of some sort. And so some of them will be on top of the matte piece, and then some of them will end up going underneath. To glue my pocket down, I'm just using a little bit of the Ranger on the very edge all the way around the sides and bottom. And I would say when you cut this piece, even though that panel, that quarter is 6 inches across, cut your pocket to just shy of 6 inches, like 5 7/8 or something, so that whenever you go to close it, that the pocket doesn't interfere with folding it up. So then on the rest of the pieces, I'm using just, I think it's 1/2 inch score tape, the Sook Wing. And that's just because I'm not loving the Ranger, probably just because I don't have, it's not a great tip and I can't control the flow as well. And plus, just the score tape is so much quicker for this. I don't have to wait for dry time or hold it down or anything. So here I decided I wanted my strip to go underneath my mat instead of on top. So cutting down another border strip real quick for that. And you can really decorate these any way you want. I do like, you could also use single-sided paper. You would just have white on the inside and then just add your color. It would be more of a white border around your panels instead of, you know, another pattern. And this paper is, it's thick, not overly thick, but once I added all the matte pieces, it kind of made the card sturdier. So I would suggest making sure you're using more of a cardstock weight instead of like the thin patterned paper weight. Unless you're going to double it up and glue 2 pieces together, that might work too. But so now here I realized I should have trimmed the sides down a little bit more so that whenever I fold it, it's a cleaner fold. And then I'm just using my bone folder to kind of make sure to set the creases, the folds really well. So I liked that multicolored, like almost like a raindrop pattern, but I didn't like it against the black the floral. So I decided I'm going to matte that one with more of a solid. So I just used the back side of one of the pattern pieces just to add an additional layer on that one. And then I'm trying to figure out what I want to use as my strip on the top piece. The actual time that it took me to make this one card plus an envelope was only 1 hour and 15 minutes. And I ended up making a second card and envelope, and I feel like that one only took me, like both of those pieces only took me 1/2 hour. So within 1 hour and 45 minutes, I would have had 2 cards and 2 envelopes. So even though it only took me 1 hour and 15 minutes to make this one card and the envelope, it was over the span of a week. I feel like it took me forever just because I didn't have a chance to work on it as much as I wanted to. And so like several days went by, and so I feel like it took me forever. So when I saw the actual time, I was just like, oh, that was much quicker than I thought. And you could totally mass produce these, and the more you make, the quicker they're going to go, just like anything else. Or if you're making this to give as a gift, you could totally spend more time on it and embellish it more. So really struggled to find a strip for that last piece there. So on a lot of these strips, if I'm putting them on top, I'm only putting the glue on the very outer edges so that something could slide under it if need be, depending on the orientation of the picture they would choose. So now I'm actually looking for more embellishments now that I have all my base pieces down. And those white flowers are vinyl. They're flowers that I cut out of scrap vinyl. And so I punched a circle, like scallop circle, out of one of the pattern papers on the back side, and then layered it with that white flower. I didn't want to add a ton of dimension to the inside, especially of this card, just because once you add pictures and it's going to get bulky, and like I said, the paper wasn't, super duper thick, so I didn't want to add a bunch of extra weight or bulk. Probably the most dimensional thing I used on the inside were those little metal flowers, and I mean, they really weren't all that thick. It still lays fairly flat. So I decided to cut out a little word from that mom-themed cut-apart sheet. And so I was looking for something that would describe a mother. And so I went with beauty, and then decided I wanted to back it on some black. And that's just going to accent my little pocket there. I didn't want to add more flowers on that pocket just because there was already a bunch of flowers going on in the background. So even though these metal flowers were self-adhesive, I decided to add a little bit of the Ranger glue as well, because I'm not sure, I think I inherited those. I'm not sure how long they'd been in my stash or someone's stash before that. So I just wanted to make sure that they were going to stick. So you can see here I'm adding a fishtail to the beauty word and the matte piece, and that is kind of my hack for cutting fishtail banners in layers, multiple layers at one time. I like to cut both layers at one time because I would never be able to match up. Like, I never cut the same fishtail angles ever. And so I find that if I cut both pieces at the same time, then I know that the angles are at least pretty close to each other, so they're not going to be totally off. So here I just used another one of those, or I used my vinyl flower and then added another little vinyl circle on top just to be the center of the flower. So now I'm going to glue my beauty word down, and then I'm going to bring in some more vinyl circles just as additional detail to the flower centers on that pocket piece. So now I get to decorate the front cover, and I decided to bring in a doily, I think it's from the Dollar Tree, just to give myself kind of a neutral base starting point since that floral pattern was very busy. But I wanted to add some layers to it, and I wanted to bring in some of the colors from the paper, as well as just some like different textures. And so I have a sentiment just because I wanted it truly is a Mother's Day card, just a card that you can add pictures to. So I decided to add a sentiment to the front, and then I've pulled in some other border strips just to layer on there. And then the green doily actually is from a past Scrapping for Less Flavor of the Month kit. And here, to adhere my doily down, I used score tape in the center, but then added a little bit of Ranger glue to the outer edge of the doily, just so that the edges would stay down, and I didn't want them to like pull up and tear. This is where one of those ultra fine tips would work really well. I'm trying to get that glue out in small doses. So I'm going to do the same thing on well, here I'm actually layering the strips, getting those cut down. So here on this green doily, I just glue it down the same way. I liked the pop of color that the green doily gave, as well as the extra detail. So I'm just adding my strips down with the score tape. And then getting my sentiment down. And then the silver chipboard flower was also adhesive, but again, I inherited it from someone else, not sure how long it's been in somebody's stash, and it's been in mine for a bit, so decided to add a little bit of glue to the back of it as well, just to make sure it's going to stay put. And then I decided that while I like that metallic look of that flower, I wanted to give it more detail. So I decided to punch a flower out of one of the pattern papers. I'm just using the back side. And I believe that is an EK Success flower punch. And then either that or Paper Studios. I will link it below once I figure that out. And then I also pulled in a little Jolie's daisy flower just to add something to the center of it as well. So I used that flower punch again here, adding just a little bit to one of my panels, using that flower punch along with one of my white vinyl flowers. And then decided on the very back page here that I wanted to add just a little bit. So I love that little yellow polka dot pattern. It's just so bright and happy and fresh for me. So I decided to pull in more of the yellow on the back side there and just punch some little flowers. And I'm just layering them up there on the corner. And then my card is pretty much complete. Oh, except for a journal card. Now I wanted to add another journal card on the inside. If you have a collection that has a bunch of journal cards, you could totally pile a bunch more cards into that pocket, or even photo mats. If you're giving this as a gift to someone, you could always just add extra photos into the pocket as well. Since I only had a few journal cards left with the collection, I wanted to create some more just so there was another either opportunity for journaling or photo. So I went back to that cut apart sheet with the mom related words on it and found a phrase that talks about favorite memory of mom or something like that, and decided to make that the focus of a journal card. And I just decided to put it on plain white cardstock and then back it with some of the pattern paper. And then I had a scrap of that border paper kind of in front of me, so it looked like it was the perfect width to be a mat for my phrase so that it would pop off the white, so I just decided to go with that. And now I get to put all that together. I'm glad to finally be using those word cut aparts. They've been in my stash since like 2008. Probably earlier than that. So now I'm making a quick envelope. Just took a 12 by 12 piece, turned it on the diagonal, and I'm using my card as my template to fold up and get all of my creases made. I wanted to make sure there was plenty of room in my envelope so that the card had room to grow once you add the additional layers of pictures in it. So after you make all of your folds, you end up with these little triangles in between the flaps. And I just cut those out. And again, make sure you're cutting on the outside of the fold line so that when you fold, they don't interfere with each other. So now I'm just trying to figure out the best way to fold it so that the flaps lay prettily. So on this piece, the very first flap that I'm adhering, I only put it on the very tip of the flap so that it doesn't glue to my card. And I did not glue it like tight down. Like I didn't pull things tight when I was gluing them down because again, I wanted to leave room inside the envelope. So here on the bottom flap, I did add a little bit more adhesive because it had more surface to glue to. Now I'm just trimming up my angles so that my top flap looks even and pretty. And I could have used a punch board for this, but like I said, I wanted to leave some room, and I kind of wanted to show you that you don't have to have a punch board to make an envelope, especially if you're making an odd size envelope. Just use your card as a template. Okay, so here are my finished cards, and I did end up making two since I had enough paper left, so I decided to go ahead and make an extra one. This is the one I made with you guys. I'm going to zoom in just a little bit. All right, so that's better. So as you saw, I just added some doilies and embellished the front a little bit. I was trying to, as I mentioned earlier, I was trying to stay away from a lot of dimension, but I did add a little bit of layering and dimension with this chipboard silver flower here. But I did want to give it some little pizzazz and some pop. So then you open it up and you have places for pictures. This is kind of like a belly band. They can slide it under, or they can just, you know, put the picture down here or journal on it, whatever they want to do. And same way with this one up here. This is open as a belly band. And then I made another journaling card for this one. This was just one of the little cut-aparts that I had left on my sheet. My best memory of Mom is, so I thought that would be fun, that they could either add a story in a picture or just a picture or drawing, depending on who it is, of their mom. And then they also have another little journal card that was part of the collection. So again, kept it simple and relatively flat with the embellishments. Other than these metal flowers, they do have a little bit of dimension. And then on the very back, I just kept this one simple and did add some little flowers down there in the corner. And then you saw the process for the envelope, kind of not a science by any means. I didn't want to use my punch board just because of I wanted it to have some dimension, so I wanted it to be, I made it to the size of the card, but left some room so that if pictures were added, you know, there would still be a little bit of room. And then I have my tape for if somebody needs to mail it or they can seal it. And then I think I might add a label on here as well, just if like a, you know, mail to or deliver to, some kind of label that they can put the address to the recipient on. So the second one I made is very similar. This one, the envelope is green, and that is only because I only had 2 full sheets left of paper. I had the yellow and the green, so used those up. The front is very similar. I think pretty much everything is the same, except here I did use the stripes instead of the polka dots, so I added a different border strip here. And then the journal cards are different. This was part of the collection. This is just a sentiment that I printed out from my silhouette. And then this was just a little scrap that I had left, and on the bottom here it like ended right on a rickrack border layer. So I just cut it off just to give the bottom a little bit of detail, and then I added a little punched polka dot flower up here as my little tag topper. And I think that's everything else is pretty much the same. So these are my Mother's Day photo cards, again inspired by Amber at Lyric Lover Crafts. And now that this was the big project, and then I can move on to some cards, so stay tuned. I will also include my card process from this pad. If you guys have any questions, please let me know. I will include in the description box the link to Amber's video where she does the initial tutorial, and then I will also include any of the products that I've used that I can find links for. But thank you guys so much for your time today. I hope you'd enjoy this, and I hope you're all finding a way to stay crafty during this crazy time that we're all in with the kind of the coronavirus quarantine. So anyway, thanks again, guys, and I hope you're all staying safe and healthy. Bye.